Ajarn, could I bring back my questions yesterday about my view of the studying of Dhamma? My view about the studying of Dhamma is not useless at all because Ajarn said that every studying Ajarn often said that the studying will be useless for which doesn't lead to the understanding of the reality right now, but I think it's not because
you mean the awareness or right or understanding directly?
I think she's referring to, you mentioned yesterday that if one is just collecting words and details and book knowledge, it's useless because it's not the understanding of Dhamma now. So she's concerned that her study is useless.
So it means that it's just hearing the word, but each word should be considered very carefully, like Dhamma. See, even one hears the word Dhamma many times, but what is seen now is not yet Dhamma. It's always something. That's why we know that from hearing there is nothing but that which is conditioned to arise, to see, to hear, to think, to like, to dislike, and everything in life is conditioned to be so and so, such and such, not self. If we do not forget that there is no one, we'll study Dhamma with more understanding. For example, it's not me, it's no one. Seeing is just that which arises to see right now. Whenever it arises, it sees. It's like the accumulation of reminders of what is now, so that there can be direct awareness of it with understanding, conditioned by intellectual understanding. That's why if there is no intellectual understanding, it's impossible to have the higher understanding directly to what appears now. For example, is this now seeing or I? So listen again and again and again. That's the only way which will lead the direct awareness to, is there directly at the moment of seeing, to the seeing as that which now sees. It arises to see, it arises to experience, and that which is seen, without seeing, it cannot appear at all. So it's only the object of that which is now arises to experience, no one at all. Study with the understanding of no one, of all realities. Now, thinking is not self, it's no one, it's conditioned to think after hearing. By conditions, no matter like arises with it or dislike arises with it, uncontrollable each moment, and they are gone. See, while we are talking, our Dhammas are gone, unknown. So we listen again and again and again of what appears in life. Is there you who hears what hears? you hear, or the reality which experiences sound is there. So sound can appear as object of that which now hears it. No one is gone completely, never to return at all. Is it right or true or not? So from birth to death, one lives in the world of image, taken for real. Even right now, it's only the image of that which arises and falls away, no matter through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind.
You mean that it needs considerations over and over again and again?
It's not
To lead
you
to-
who consider all Dhammas. There can be understanding without thinking that now I understand. Understanding is conditioned to arise and to understand. But not enough at all. So many moments gone without understanding, adding more and more ignorance.
So it's not a matter of doing anything. Like we know that if there's no wise considering, understanding cannot develop. But if we have the idea, I must consider now, then it's not understanding, which is anatta. It's the idea that I will consider. So this is why it's very subtle. And if we think about something like you mentioned yesterday about the Patisandhi citta and the 19 kinds of cittas that can perform the function of Patisandhi. When we reflect about Patisandhi and the kinds of cittas that perform that function, is it pariyatti understanding or is it useless understanding?
I don't think it's useless, but I think it's not pariyatti understanding.
So if it's not pariyatti and it's not useless, it must be kusala or akusala. So the answer is it depends. So everyone in this room might be thinking now about the kinds of cittas that have the function of patisandhi or birth. And for some people there may be moments of doubt, and for some people moments of wrong understanding, thinking about my birth or someone's birth, and for some people just useless or delirious thinking about how they can collect the details. But there can also be wise reflection, because from the first moment of life there were just dhammas conditioned in different ways, no being, no person that was born, just citta that has that function of birth for that moment and then gone, never to return. And we consider a little bit deeper and deeper what kind of cittas can perform that function of birth, and we learn more just to understand that it's just a conditioned Dhamma, conditioned in many different ways. Nothing that anyone can do anything about. And like we discussed this morning, there's momentary death at each moment, but even after the last moment of this life and the first moment of next life, that citta has to be conditioned by karma. So what kind of karma and what kind of citta performs that function? So if the studying is to really understand more about how there are only elements in life, just different dhammas which are anatta, then it's pariyatti understanding. But if it's just collecting more details so that I am more knowledgeable, then it's useless thinking. So it's not so much a matter of what is studied, but how it's studied, with a wise or unwise attention. And it can be different at different moments. One can start reading a sutta with wise consideration and then be lost in the details and so concerned about what the Pali word means, no wise consideration at all. So different moments, whether it's useful or useless. And how can it be known whether the study now is useful or useless?
Okay, maybe
How
this
can
life.
it be known? How can it be known? Telephone. How can it be known now whether it's a useful study or useless study?
Because of panya.
Because of panya, yeah. If there's no panya, no understanding, then it cannot be known whether at this very moment, whether it's pariyatti understanding or just useless speculation.
But maybe this life is useless. I don't understand anything at all. But maybe in next life it will lead to the intellectual or directly understand. It's quite impossible. It's quite possible.
At the moment of thinking, this life may be useful, useless, and I don't understand anything. What kind of chittas are they at that moment?
Maybe doubt.
Doubt, and I can't understand anything. So we can see wrong idea of I, conditioning, doubt, even now in the middle of a Dhamma discussion. So it's just passing Dhammas, just different Dhammas, but even at that moment of doubt, even at that moment of clinging to the idea of I and my understanding or my useless life, there can be awareness, there can be understanding right now. That's when it can be known. And now it's gone. Just moments of thinking with akusala chittas, that's all.
So do you mean that when there's studying the Dhamma, the book knowledge without understanding, there's still some degrees of understanding there that can condition further understanding in future lives? Is what you mean?
Okay. Now I don't understand, but I don't think maybe sanya just accumulate, but maybe the accumulation of sanya can lead to the understanding in the future, so it's not useless.
What is useful for us to hear or read at the present moment is any aspect of the Dhamma that is likely to help us understand, help awareness to arise. So it depends very much on the level of our understanding, because if we're beginners, then the deeper details are not going to be of any direct relevance at this stage. So as Ajarn often reminds us, we need to keep in mind how much do we really know, how much, to what extent has understanding been developed at the present moment, so that we can have a better idea about what is useful and what is too advanced to be useful. Because if it's, even though it's the Dhamma, if it's much more advanced than is likely to be understandable or to condition more awareness at any time in this life, then it is not useful, really. So it's no good hoping that it might be coming useful in a future lifetime, because each birth means that there has to be hearing the Dhamma again, And in terms of, again, what is going to be useful is still at that same level. That doesn't mean that we should stop studying deeper details if we have an interest in doing so. It's just that so we aren't deluded into thinking that, okay, this is actually of some immediate application or relevance. Because having an interest in the Dhamma generally there's nothing, we call it useless in terms of developing understanding. It doesn't mean it's something that should not be pursued.
And also, I have no way of knowing if what realm, what bhumi I'll be born in. I could be reborn in hell or a dog, and no way of hearing the Dhamma.
The point is that, like when you said several times, well, I can understand, I can't understand, sanya, so I can understand better. And even when we think about what bhumi I will be reborn in, it's all the story of I and understanding for me, isn't it? So more sanya now so that I can understand better in future. But there's no I that can ever understand or not understand. So if it's not understanding now with sanya, it won't, with right sanya, it won't condition more understanding later by that sanya. So from the very beginning it has to be the understanding now that they are dhammas, passing dhammas. The understanding it doesn't belong to me or you or Tam or anyone else. Just like the useless thinking now or the doubt now, it's not my doubt or your doubt. It's just a Dhamma that arises with citta and passes away. So that's why we study more about the details, because if we just hear a little bit about seeing, visible object, hearing, sound, cittas in a process, it's not enough to really understand the very deep-rooted idea of self that's there. So there has to be a lot of considering of a lot of details and a lot of aspects by discussing ayatanas, as we were yesterday, and khandhas and dhatus in many different aspects, because that idea is so deeply rooted. So however much listening and considering, when it's the idea of my understanding, that can never lead to more right understanding. So right now, there can be understanding that it's just Dhamma, nothing belonging to me at all. Is that correct?
I think also another aspect that reading, let's say, a Abhidhamma book, or to be in here to join the discussion, there is no difference in the absolute meaning of, we cannot say which way that can help to have more right consideration. So I have a question about, I see that a lot of sutta that the Buddha mentioned about unwholesome and wholesome. For example, he has very nice word for the people who do the good deed, and strong word for the people who did the bad thing. So I think that wholesome and unwholesome, understanding about wholesome and unwholesome, is very important for the development of understanding. So can you explain a little bit more to know how important it is?
I think he taught about all kinds of dhammas. So sometimes he was teaching about different kinds of rupas, like the rupas taken for the body. Sometimes, like in the sutta I mentioned yesterday that Robert asked about, just mentioning Vedana, Sanya, Vitakka, that's all. Sometimes, as you say, mentioning different kusala and akusala states, talking about metta, talking about generosity, talking about bad deeds, but always talking about different realities as anatta. It's never my good deeds, my bad deeds. So whatever we read about, there should be understanding that these are just different dhammas, different elements, nothing that is mine or anyone else's. And we don't know when we read what kind of chittas will arise, like yesterday when we were talking about virya in detail. For some people, there may be conditions for wise reflecting and understanding. For some people, there may be just more doubt. For others, there may be boredom or aversion because it's not interesting, it's not the topic they want to hear about. But we just consider and study and ask about different kinds of dhammas to gradually get closer and closer to understand that whatever dhamma it is we're talking about, it's life now and it's anatta. Otherwise we just go on thinking in terms of stories and situations and people and my little understanding and someone else's great understanding and comparing and conceit and wrong understanding. So it's only by hearing more about all kinds of dhammas that the truth becomes clearer and clearer. Like in the beginning, I used to think it was so uninteresting to hear about Bhavanga Chittas. I couldn't see the point. But now I understand the value much more, all the different kinds of chittas that perform the function of birth. Before it wouldn't seem of any value, so it depends on what is useful at the time. If one doesn't know anything about the distinction between seeing and visible object, it's useless to talk about kinds of birth consciousness or the fine details about virya. So that's why I think it's helpful to ask questions about what seems relevant and what seems useful to know about, like everyone is doing here. And understanding kusala and akusala, if there isn't any understanding that these are dhammas, like metta, which is different from attachment, as everyone knows, but if there's no understanding of what dhamma is, it's my metta that I would like to have more of, so this is not any understanding. So first there has to be the understanding of what dhamma is, so that when one talks about a quality like metta and how it's different from attachment, it's understood that it's not my metta, not my attachment. It's just the dhamma that we're talking about.
And I think in terms of kusala and the development of understanding that the Buddha talks about, I think he placed more, I think the Buddha placed more importance on kusala that's been performed in the past than on having kusala in the present lifetime as a condition for developing understanding in the present lifetime. He referred to as pubbe kata in the teaching. So I think in fact it's one of the blessings, but to have done good deeds in past lives, so that it's a condition for being born into favourable circumstances in the present life, including favourable for the development of insight. But it's very important to realise that regardless of the level of other kinds of kusala that one has in the present lifetime, that understanding can be developed, because it's the accumulated tendency for developing awareness and understanding that is important, and not the accumulated tendency for other kinds of kusala. that is a support for developing understanding, but it is not a condition in the same way that the accumulated tendency of understanding that's been developed in the past is a condition for development of understanding in the present lifetime. And that's why one doesn't kind of, of course, development of kusala is praised and exhorted, but not, doesn't have a specific role, as it were, in developing insight in this lifetime.
Understanding is kusala.
Sorry?
Understanding is kusala.
Yes. I was referring to kinds of kusala other than understanding, which I think the question related to.
I think the point was if one thinks that I must be a good person first, which many people do, or I must be have very high degree of metta before there can be understanding, or I must avoid any harmful deeds first. It's not the understanding of whatever is conditioned at this moment.
You mean what I mean is to understand more about the benefit of kusala and the danger of akusala in a way of for the development of understanding.
So what comes first? If there is no understanding, can anything be known or understood about the benefit of kusala? For example, metta. If there is no understanding of what metta is, if one just assumes that whenever one makes a dana at the foundation, it's non-stop generosity and metta, then it shows nothing is known about the quality of metta. So unless understanding develops, nothing is known about what is kusala and what is beneficial, because one is used to taking what is unwholesome for wholesome all the time. So there has to be understanding to understand what is good and what is bad, or what is kusala and what is akusala. And when understanding develops, it doesn't mind what the object is, whether it's kusala, whether it's akusala, whether it's rupa, whether it's nama. But through the development of understanding and being truthful about what life is, understanding truthfully what metta is as opposed to all the attachment that one takes for metta, that is the way that true metta or true kusala will develop. But there has to be understanding from the beginning, otherwise nothing is known.
So maybe what you're saying is that understanding is the most important kusala, right?
Well, also that the accumulated understanding is the main condition for development of more understanding, rather than accumulation of other kinds of kusala.
It's supported like by the paramis, the other wholesome qualities we were talking about the other day, but without right understanding there are no paramis, like kanti parami that we were discussing. And many people had assumed, for example, if one's very patient listening in a discussion, or patient eating one's food, one assumes it's kanti or kanti parami. But without the development of right understanding, nothing is known about what kanti is, and it cannot be parami. So understanding is always the key, the main factor.
So do you think that has something to do that why right view is the first factor of the Eightfold Path?
Because, as it says in the suttas, it's the leader.
Is the leader, right?
It's the leader,
That's why it's put
sunrise is put first.
Right.
But without the other factors, it cannot lead. But still it's the leader.
But the general view of developing other kusala, particularly samatha, as a basis for the development of insight is so pervasive.
There's even the view that you have to first develop sila, right?
If one just tries to develop sila, like Alberto asked a question about the precepts the other day, if one just has a list and one says, okay, New Year's resolution, I won't break any precepts, but actually nothing is understood about what sila is at all. Nothing is understood about the wholesome qualities of the virati, cetasikas, at the moments of abstaining from wrong deeds or speech, for example. So without understanding, nothing is known about anything. Like one may not speak anything harshly for a whole day. Does it mean there are kusala citas? Who knows?
Just to know what is kusala and what is akusala. Is that the meaning of knowing the Buddha?
No.
So you just want to understand what is kusala and akusala and what's the teachings of the Buddha about that. See, without his teachings, his word, no one knows what he enlightened at all. So that's not enough just to know what's kusala and what is kusala, because it's me or he or him. So that is not the teachings of the Buddha. So just one word, Dhamma. How can there be the understanding of that it's now, no matter it is kusala and akusala? Just to know kusala and akusala as I, is that the teachings of the Buddha? So it's much more than that. So better know deeper. What is that which is kusala and what is that which is akusala? Not to know the teachings of the Buddha is that kusala. Not understand. See? But when there is the understanding of that which is kusala, not I, and that which is akusala is not I, no one there at all. It's the beginning of have less and less akusala because of understanding the truth of reality right now. It has to be right now.
So the very first understanding would be about conditioned by wise consideration, and through all what you have taught, wise consideration means from the very consideration of no I, non-self, or anatta. Is that what's the meaning of the wise consideration?
What is what you say, lopa?
Lopa?
Yes, what's that?
Attachment to something.
Is it real?
Yes.
Is it you?
From what I learned, it is not me.
What is true?
Yes.
What is true? No I.
True. Yeah.
What is true? I or no I?
Is no I there?
So until then, there can be listening to the truth on and on until the understanding develops unknowingly right now. Until then, when it's not just the intellectual understanding, but it's a direct understanding of what appears now. That is the point or the goal of listening to the teachings. Not just learn the words and concepts.
Thank you.
When Ajarn says unknowingly, it means without intention?
Without understanding.
But Ajarn,
What was there a moment ago arises. It has risen, fallen away unknowingly. Many chittas, many cetasikas.
It means there was moha, nothing known about it. The moment of seeing a go, just arose, and moha following it, nothing known.
So it means Ajarn is talking about moha. He's not talking about all the dhammas that you cannot know. Right?
It's not known.
There was no panya arising, so when there's no panya, nothing is known about them. Even if it was moments of kusala, like moments of metta, but without understanding, it's not known. Nothing is known without understanding. So most of the day, most of life, from when we wake up to when we go to bed, it's just chittas arising and falling away, completely unknown.
Just getting back to the wise consideration, there are of course different levels of all the kinds of kusala have different levels, and that the same applies to wise consideration. So understanding or seeing dhammas as not self is a particular aspect of understanding which also has different levels, but we can say in general that it's a relatively advanced level of understanding, although even at beginning levels there can be some intellectual appreciation, or perhaps a bit more, of what it means for dhammas to be not self. So a beginning level of awareness and understanding has wise consideration that is appropriate to that level. So we can't be specific and say wise consideration is this or that or the other, but it is moments of wholesome reflection on what has been heard that relate to some reality at the present moment.
You call it wholesome, or it is wholesome?
If it's wholesome, it has to be wholesome independently of whatever I call it.
Yes, no matter what you call it.
Yeah.
That's why it's better to understand the characteristic of the realities, not just the word. For example, wise consideration. It seems like I have to do that, I have to consider carefully, but actually after hearing, it depends on understanding whether it's there or not. But when it's understanding, it's because there is wise consideration of what is heard. Not you who try or who just, I consider it. Everything is conditioned, arising and falling away all the time, unknowingly.
Unknowingly.
Yes.
The why consideration, it is the kusala citta. It's about it's the kusala citta.
Okay. Usually when we read in the text about wise consideration, and what Jan is referring to is we're talking about kusala cittas with understanding, yoniso manasikara. In fact, it includes all kinds of kusala, but specifically referring in most context like now to kusala citas with panya, and especially the understanding of Dhamma as Dhamma, the opposite of ayoniso manasikara, unwise attention.
You mean
unwise
with panya?
With panya. So like now,
at very low level.
Like now, like the beginning level that we were chatting about with Ha this morning. So now, talking about kusala and how there has to be understanding, otherwise nothing is known about kusala. We're just reflecting about the nature of different dhammas and reflecting about how understanding develops. So this is pariyatti understanding when there are kusala citas. It's referring to life now. Like now there are moments of doubt, moments of wise considering, moments of disturbance, but just different dhammas not belonging to you or me or anyone. So reflecting on these different dhammas, that's wise consideration.
So, Ajarn mentioned about unknowingly, so it's not appear now.
When
right?
there's no wise consideration, then these same dhammas, the disturbance, the seeing, the hearing, the moments of attachment, the moments of doubt, they still arise, but they rise and they fall away completely unknown. Nothing is known about them. If we don't hear the Buddha's teachings, if nothing is known about what can be understood, if no understanding develops, if there's no wise consideration, there are many moments of kusala and akusala in a day, even for people who've never heard the teachings, seeing, hearing, thinking, just like now, but they rise, fall away unknowingly. And even for those of us who've heard the teachings quite a lot, still most of the day dhammas arise and fall away completely unknown, because moha that we talked about this morning, so common.
No, I'm just confused because said wise consideration is arise with the panya, but with panya it should know about the, but it cannot be unknowingly, right?
How long do moments of wise consideration with panya last for?
For single citta is very quick, but
yes, so when panya arises, it's very quick and then gone, completely gone, nothing.
sure.
So afterwards, more moments of unknowing.
But we are talking about the wise consideration. That means it's very much number of the citta with the panya.
How long do
I don't
those
know.
cittas with wise consideration last?
Sometime, not this topic, right? People asking, is this no or not? So we
Even-
mentioned about only panya, no,
Right.
right? And in this discussion, I just read about the why consideration is come with panya. How panya does not know?
Because when panya arises, it knows at that moment, at that instant.
Itself no.
Panya knows what is experienced, what the reality is. For example, hardness, when panya arises and hardness is experienced, it knows what hardness is. When doubt arises and there is panya instantly, it knows what the characteristic of doubt is. But when panya doesn't arise, all these dhammas arise and fall away unknown.
One more question. Let's say panya know at that moment and it's completely gone. But at that moment, sanya should mark, right?
Right.
The
Object.
the panya at that moment as well, so it can be remembered.
The sanya that arises with panya marks the object that is
Object.
experienced by panya,
Okay.
but that panya and sanya accumulate, so they lead to more wise panya and sanya.
Just to clarify also, wise consideration is the name of one mental factor which arises with all jittas, the mental factor of manasikara. When it arises with kusala jittas, it's called wise consideration, so may or may not be with panya. But when we're talking about the development of understanding of the Buddha's path, and one of the 4 factors for the development of understanding and the gaining of stream entry is having heard the Dhamma, the wise consideration or reflection on what one has heard. And so there it has the meaning that when there is some level of understanding of what has been heard, referring to panya, the manasikara that accompanies citta, that is also accompanied by panya.
Please say a question again.
As Sarah talking about the wise consideration, and my question was, what is the wise consideration?
So now that can be the question for you.
Okay. So it's quite okay. My question.
Your answer, please.
My answer. At the wise consideration is with panya, but it absolutely.
What is consideration?
The reflection on what we heard about the Dhamma.
Is that manasikara citasika now?
Yes.
It's not you.
In theory, no.
Does it arise with seeing?
Yes.
Is it wise attention?
You mean at the moment seeing? And now? I don't know.
That's why we learn to understand before we can get rid of the idea of self. Because there is understanding of reality, each one better and better. To know that the manasikara is not the samadhi, concentration or one-pointedness. So that's why we learn to understand each Dhamma clearly, to be skillful in pariyatti. Otherwise it seems like there is understanding enough, but how can it be enough if it cannot condition the direct understanding of whatever appears to us? That's why we learn to understand as no I, it's not I, but it is this, it is that, it is the other reality, in order to understand more and more about no self. So now manasikara citasikas arise with how many cittas?
Every citta with
that's it.
one.
When it arises with vipaka, seeing, can it be kusala?
Seeing is the tâm quả là gì thì? Vipaka.
See, and when it arises with akusala, can it be kusala, manasikara, or wise?
It cannot be kusala or
That's
akusala.
the way it is, Dhamma, not you. Just learn to understand, just one word at a time. Even they arise and fall away all the time, but not a moment can be known exactly without direct understanding of that which just appear. Do you expect to have manasikara as the object of direct awareness?
Honestly, yes.
Pardon?
Honestly, yes. But correct.
It's not like you think.
Yeah, I know.
All depends on conditions. Can the wise attention arise with the kusala without panya?
No.
See, that's not enough to learn just one word, to have clear understanding. It arises with all cittas, right? All cittas. No matter it is kusala, akusala, vipaka or kiriya. To understand that actually no one can change the way it is at all. So, can it arise with kiriya citta? Manasikara?
Yes. Sorry, in Pali word cannot remember.
Just
any word.
one more word, manasikara.
Okay. Manasikara arise with every citta.
Every citta.
Yeah. Đúng không?
Can it be vipaka?
Vipaka, yes.
Can it be kiriya?
Yes.
Can it be kusala?
Yes.
Can it be
Together.
akusala?
Yes.
So when you say wise attention or wise consideration, manasikara, wise, so can it arise with akusala?
No.
That's why we shouldn't just superficially study the meaning and the reality. Just consider again and again and again to really understand what Buddha meant. For example, just kusala and kusala, there can be the idea of self. So that is not the teaching of the Buddha. So the teachings of the Buddha, it has to be all dhammas are anatta. Is manasikara you?
No.
What is it?
It's the mental factor. Nó tác ý đúng không vậy? One of the seven universe, yeah, factor.
Is the noun?
Yes, but not up here.
Good. That's it. So you know the difference between the intellectual understanding and the direct understanding.
Manasikara means attention, but then we have yoniso manasikara and ayoniso manasikara. Is that also a cetasika, yoniso manasikara?
If it's not, what is it?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I think that everyone has the answer, but when it's not asked, you can do not think of it yet.
So when we talk about yoniso manasikara, is the manasikara cetasika when it's wholesome, right? Right, okay.
So if it's yoniso manasikara, can it arise with akusala cittas?
No.
Can it arise with moments of seeing and hearing?
No.
Can it arise with kiriya cittas?
No.
What about the kiriya cittas of the arahat?
Manosikara mà.
Yoniso manasikara, yes.
Yoniso là như lý mà. No, right?
Difficult point. So when we talk about the cittas of the arahats, we don't talk about kusala cittas, no more kusala or akusala, of course, no more karma, but kiriya cittas. So they're still accompanied by these beautiful factors like yoniso manasikara. Yes.
I have a question. So we know that when there's talking about yoniso manasikara, it's referred to the kusala manasikara. So why the word yoniso is used in this context? Is there any particular
Wisely
reason?
is yoniso,
Wisely.
or wise attention.
The
Not
root
only attention.
The word yoniso comes from, it means the beginning, or it means to go to the root of the matter. So that's why it's wise, because you go. It means also wise because you go to the deepest meaning of whatever you are investigating.
Usually in the text, yoniso manasikara is referring usually to moments of kusala with understanding, but actually any kusala is yoniso, it's not ayoniso. So if we talk about the opposite, ayoniso manasikara, can it arise with kusala chitas? Yoniso manasikara. Yes.
Opposite, right?
Opposite.
Opposite. Can you read the question?
Can it arise with kusala chitas?
No.
No. Can it arise with vipaka chitas that, with any vipaka chitas? Can it arise with kiriya chitas?
Kiriya, no.
No. Because the
Kiriya.
arahat has no ayoniso manasikara.
Opposite.
Yeah, the opposite.
Apart from yoniso manasikara, is this word yoniso used in other contexts in the text?
The word yoniso by itself, is it used?
Wisely.
Is it used in the text, only the word yoniso without manasikara?
Because manasikara is attention. It attend wisely or unwisely. If it's unwisely, can citta be kusala?
No. And Ajarn, the word yoniso manasikara, is it used also in the Abhidhamma or only in the suttas?
When there is the word lopa, mula citta, is it just lopa or other cetasika as well? Lopa, mula citta.
It's only lopa.
Included every akusala cetasikas which can arise at that moment.
Right.
In the commentary to the Abhidhamma, it refers to yoniso manasikara and referring to all the citas in that wholesome process, and ayoniso manasikara to all the citas in the unwholesome process. So it's used in the Abhidhamma, or at least the commentaries.
And what's the benefit of talking about this or to understand this?
To know that it's not me, it's not self.
And to know that how great avijja is, greater than the whole universe, bigger, enormous. So that one will not be careless to listen carefully to the teachings.
Ajarn, I was thinking how when Ajarn teaches, Ajarn makes emphasis on always the most important thing is to understand anatta, right?
Because it's not easy to understand anatta.
But why is it the most important thing?
Because it's anatta, the truth, the absolute truth, Ariya Satya. People can think about the characteristics of dukkha, right? And anicca, but not as anatta.
But not what, Ajarn?
But not anatta. They just talk about anicca, the impermanency, and dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta. It's not mentioned.
Why is it not mentioned? Because is it it is more difficult to understand? Or?
Because they think that it's not important. They think that kusala and akusala is enough to be known. But that is not enough. As long as there's still the idea of self, it's wrong understanding. It's that which should be eradicated first before the other.
Because there's a lot of wrong views. Take everything as me and I.
And if, for example, hardness is not understood as Dhamma, which is anatta, people think they can understand the impermanence of this hardness, or think they can understand why it's unsatisfactory or suffering. But actually, if it's not understood as Dhamma, nothing can be understood about the impermanence of it or the unsatisfactoriness of it. It will be the idea of something which is impermanent, just like a speculation like one had before one heard about the Dhamma, or everyone knows that this pen won't last and is impermanent, but that's nothing to do with the understanding of the impermanence of Dhammas.
Come back to the previous point about kusala and akusala. Can I say that being less akusala is the one of the ruler for the development of understanding. Because we know that we study that, we know that the kusala and akusala arises by their own condition, and even Angulimala still killed nearly 1,000 people because of wrong view. But because at that time he hadn't met the Buddha, he hadn't listened to the teaching at that time. But after he listened to the teaching, a short time he became an arahat. But I studied for years, 2 years about the understanding of the reality right now, but the akusala still it seems to be not less at all. For example, I think that dedicate chứng minh là gì chị? It proves that the understanding is a very, very little if akusala don't reduce.
When thinking like this, oh, I have so much akusala and it's not reduced and there's so little understanding, and why aren't I an arahat like Angulimala, and why doesn't it go quicker? What kind of cheaters are thinking like that?
Okay, maybe loba.
Loba. It's just clinging to oneself all the time, and that hinders the development of understanding, because it's all about me and my understanding. No understanding now, no detachment. So those expectations and that clinging takes one in the opposite way, along the wrong path. So it's common, it's natural, but there can be understand even now of that kind of loba and that strong clinging to the idea of self even now, and then it's gone because they're just more passing dharmas. Because when there's understanding, true understanding of Dhamma, it doesn't mind how much or little or where it's going or whether it's more than yesterday. It just understands what appears now. Not my understanding, no expectation about tomorrow, just understanding and then gone. Different from when it's clinging, oh, when can I have more understanding and why do I still get angry? And that's not understanding about Dhamma as Dhamma at that moment. So just know that it hinders the path, that kind of thinking. But it's common. No one can stop it, but good to know it. And so common, not just my thinking like this, very common. Like some of the questions Nina asked, you can say more too, Nina.
It's a good. No, I approve. It is so good to be reminded all the time that it is my ignorance and my loba, and we all think like that. It's very common. It's not unusual, so nothing to be depressed about, or that my study is useless, because what Jonathan also stressed, even a little understanding, and we listen now, and we begin to understand a little more about ignorance and the clinging. It's already helpful, even if it's very little, because it can grow, it can be accumulated.
And at those moments, Geng, of thinking like that, yoniso or ayoniso manasikara, when thinking about how little understanding I have and why aren't I wiser now, and ayoniso manasikara. Yes. So this is a way that akusala can be known just when it appears, when it's obvious. But if there's no understanding, nothing will be known about it.
Oh, I was just about to say something along that line, maybe while I was crawling over the chairs. You already said it, but to Dhamma friend Hang, is that any moment can be used for a moment of understanding, even in the midst of akusala. So.
Just about the sanya, it is just to mark the object, only object.
Mark and remember the object. Like you said before about how can it be known what understanding understands, because when understanding arises, the sanya marks and remembers it, and even the understanding can be the object of understanding. So gradually, sanya conditions more wise reflection when it's kusala at those moments. It accumulates. Nothing is lost. It's not only marked, but it's remembered.
Okay. Just the function. So the function of the sanya mark the object that citta experience, right?
How do you know that this is tam and this is hang?
Yeah, what by sanya, by remember.
But if it was marked but nothing remembered, then there would be no thinking about tam and hang. The names would be forgotten.
Now I'm curious about whether it can mark the citta and cittasika. For the high developed, whether it can mark others, not just the object.
When sanya arises with every citta, it marks and remembers exactly what the citta experiences. So if at a moment of seeing, it marks and remembers the visible object seen. At a moment of panya, it marks and remembers that reality which is the object of understanding. So whatever is experienced.
On this point, I remember reading in the text that it uses the example of a carpenter who marks on the piece of wood so that it's remembered. So although we use two words, mark and remember, but actually it refers to only one function. Is that correct?
It marks the wood so that it can be remembered. So at that moment it marks and remembers it, yes.
So, it's
like we might say sati is, when we're talking about wholesome sati, it is with satipatthana, it is aware of the reality and it's not forgetful of kusala. So
at the moment of seeing, it's mark and remember the object, visible object. At the moment of wide consideration, it's mark and remember about the whatever considering, and that panya cannot be understood, cannot be experiencing, right? I mean, maybe the way how is...
You're asking whether at the moment of wise considering, for example, a moment of understanding hardness, panya arises with the citta and experiences the hardness, and sanya arises with that panya and also marks and remembers the hardness. You're asking whether that panya can be remembered. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So at that moment, the object, the hardness, is what is marked and remembered and understood. But afterwards, there may be other moments of panya which understand the panya that arose at that moment,
okay.
Because panya is also a reality. So it can be the object of other moments of panya, but not at the moment that it arises.
Okay.
Not at the moment it arises when hardness is the object.
My question is about the object can be experienced by citta with panya at that time. That the object is experienced, it appears clearly, right? Very well appeared, and panya knows it, and sanya at the same time marks and remember the very clear characteristics of the object at that time together with panya, and this is why the object is remembered and accumulated
only
correctly.
If it is highly developed panya that
Okay.
Understands very clearly,
Okay.
but in the beginning it's not clearly. It begins and it develops.
Okay.
And sanya with it, that wholesome sanya with that panya, it also develops with it at those times. They accumulate.
If no one...
So now there is seeing and there is thinking after it. But thinking is not seeing. There are different dhammas, and I'm asking because you were asking that you wanted to understand more. You wanted to understand about realities, and realities are now like seeing and then thinking, and so it's nothing to try to do anything really, because They arise and pass away and fall away. And now and then after seeing, understanding can arise or cannot arise. But when trying to understand seeing is not the understanding of seeing, because it's something else, but it's by conditions. So we don't expect to listen to the teachings and to understand the direct understanding of the teachings. But what is being said can, since it's true, it sounds true, and then we know that it is true, and we know that maybe it's not the time yet to have direct understanding of realities, but at least we know the truth about it. And that's a start, I think, better than not knowing anything. Better than thinking that there is no visible object, there is people. Better than knowing that. We know better than that. There is no people, there is no you, no me, nobody. That's the theory.
I have a question about nimitta. Nimitta. We study that every reality arises and fall away, and it led the nimitta of citta, cetasika, and rupa. So in case of seeing, we know that after seeing there is a tree, and nearly 10 citta arise and fall away in that process, and then the mind of process. So if there is a condition for panya arises in mind of process to understand the seeing in the reverse process, of course understand the nimitta of the seeing in the reverse process. So how can it be? Because the seeing, after seeing, there are nearly 10 citta more, nearly 10 more citta arises and fall away. So in accurate, we can say that before the mind of process, it must be the nimitta of the Dhamma là gì chị? Tadaramana citta, the two last, not seen, not the nimitta of the seeing. Do you understand my question?
So even more cheetahs, the Tadaramana cheetahs, and then the Bhavanga cheetahs. Don't forget the Bhavanga cheetahs, even more. But these cheetahs and these processes of seeing, they rise and fall away so rapidly, unbelievably fast, and that characteristic of seeing, the limiter of seeing, can appear and can be directly known. That's all. Because it's these cheetahs, these processes, they follow so rapidly. So like the example of the spinning top, the image is left behind. Or like the photocopy, it doesn't matter how many cheetahs there were before. Actually, it's all so fast, and for me it's just enough to know that that image, that nimitta, can appear, and when there's understanding of it, of seeing consciousness, no thought, no care about how many cheetahs and how come, or it's just the way it is, that reality can be known, and it's called reality. even though the seeing itself fell away several moments ago. I don't know if Ajarn wants to add any more.
In order to understand Dhamma, it's not the word from the book, and then we try to find out. But now is the moment to begin to understand how it come to be image or nimitta. Without Paramattha Dhamma, can there be image? And if just one Paramattha, one characteristic arise and fall away, can there be people and things? Just break up the body into the tiniest piece. Is there eye, ears, arms, legs? No. So when they come together and they arise together, falling away, arising and falling away, each one unknowingly, then the shape and form is there to take it for something permanent, like now. Because if we just talk about one reality at a time, citta is not cetasika. Rupa is not citta, not cetasika. So when you get angry with someone, you get angry to whom? To what?
To Nama and Rupa.
But when
that
there's
follow.
the idea of someone, the image of something, you like or dislike it, and you do not know the truth, that actually each moment arises and falls away in split seconds. So you're angry, what? You are attached to what? See? None, nothing at all. This is the way to understand what appears now as it is. Just a moment of seeing, experiences and visible object which arises and impinges on the eye, and before it falls away, it conditions citta in process to experience it, but without its intention, no will to have anyone experience at all. But life is like this. Realities are realities. The way it is like this. That's why no one knows at all about the truth of each moment, which is so very rapidly experienced. That's why we learn to understand that seeing is not hearing, and what are in between. Many cittas, not only one or two, unknown. Whether it is true or not, listen more, consider more, know more as not self. The truth is no one, no self. Until then, because just hearing is not enough to eradicate defilements or ignorance. As long as it's not the direct understanding of just that which appears as the object right now, it has to be known, studied carefully, that how can it be I when it arises and falls away by conditions. Without realities, there cannot be image at all. So what can be known? The image or the reality? You know now, but no understanding of it. As if there is no realities, there cannot be any image appear at all. So what is image? It's the rapidity of the succession of the reality arising and falling away, uncountable. Citta, cetasika and rupa. When we talk about tiniest piece, or what you call kalapa, there are akasa in between. Who knows? But it's true, and it can be known. Otherwise, it is something all the time. Even if you don't know the term, to call it, but there is doubt. What is that? It's hard. And then there can be the idea of question. Is this? I used to take it for my finger or whatever. Now it's gone, but the idea keeps on thinking that it's there. Even by conditions, it's not enough, because actually, when it's broken up into just that kalapa, it arises in false way, nothing. And this is rupa. What about citta? Much more than that, very intricate, from moment to moment, with different cetasikas. And when we talk about fire, or fire element, or dhatu, it burns, right? It's hot. So while it burns, is it hot too? So we talk about realities that we haven't considered. We just pass and think about it. But the truth is that it's hot and it burns. Like sanya, mark and remember. And when it does not appear, how can we understand its function? See? So it's just the book brings about thinking about it. It's not clear. So the first thing is not understand the characteristic of cetasika or citta, but that which experience. And without the intellectual understanding, even it's now experience, no understanding about its nature. Last night or yesterday, was there anything happen, what you call, in the body?
I have no idea. Don't remember anything.
See, you say don't remember, but what is true? You remember that you don't remember. Because it's different from moment of remembering.
You just mentioned about the fire element which burns and hot. But when we talk about fire elements, we also mention about cold.
The same, but it's not as hot. Less and less. It's cold.
Okay. But in that case,
temperature.
In that, I think the meaning of burning should be something finer than what we ordinarily think. So,
in order to understand reality, we have to understand what is there which burns, and is it hot or not. No matter it's burnt by cold, it depends on the degree. But it cannot change its characteristic into hardness, softness.
Like when it's very cold, actually it burns you. It burns you.
So just one word represents a reality, can be studied thoroughly, more and more skillful to understand reality right then, whether it burns or whether it's hot or whether it's cold, not self, different from other realities. For now, is it citta or cetasika which can be the object of right understanding? just that which experiences. And when it's not anger, it's not attachment, it's not other characteristic of Cetasika, what can be known is that which experiences as a chief, like Citta. So if anyone tries so hard to concentrate or to understand Citta, it cannot be done that way or any way at all, because it has to be right understanding which develops from hearing, thinking, considering, until it becomes just a little bit close to its characteristic, like that which now experiences. No time to think about whether it is Citta or Cetasika at all. But when there is dukkha through body sense, you know that that is not Citta, because it has different characteristic, because it's unpleasant feeling through the body. So it depends on what is there as not self, as only that which can experience or that which cannot experience. Like breath, see? Some people just read about the Satipatthana and think that there should be the concentration on breath. No understanding, it's useless. Buddha didn't tell anyone to do anything at all, but just to understand the truth from his words. So it depends, all depends on understanding. Is manasikara understanding? Is manasikara the understanding Cetasika? See, we learn to understand that they are different. Without yoniso manasikara, can there be understanding? They are together, but it depends on what can appear as object. And usually, does manasikara appear as object? That's why we do not have to name or call anything, but understand the characteristic of that which is different from that which cannot experience. Like now, no need to think about whether it is Citta or Cetasika, but when it appears, its characteristic as Cetasika is different from Citta.
Ajarn mentioned about the nimitta and also the image. So I just confused about what Ajarn mentioned about.
What appears now?
Confusion, doubt.
Really, at moment of seeing. So doubt is another moment. It's not the seeing.
Yes.
So what seeing sees now?
Seeing, see the visible object.
You can say that.
Yes.
But that which appears now is not visible object, because you take it for something permanent.
Yeah. But Ajarn said what seeing see.
Seeing sees that which can be seen. See, just remember, only one reality can be seen among all other realities. Only that which is now seen can be seen. It's the world of seeing, the world of thinking about that which is seen. People and things, building, car, street, wall, all about thinking about that which is seen. And hearing, too, thinking after hearing a lot. So there is a mixed world when there is the idea of something permanent.
So that is what Ajarn mentioned about the image. the image. Image means the word and the something people saying about or about the
that
people.
which appears as something.
Okay. But nimitta, it represent for the reality, not the image.
No one knows about reality. Just take it for something permanent. Like I see a cup.
Right.
Who knows that that is not a cup? It's only that which can impinge on the eye sense and arise and falls away. It cannot stay long at all. So from hearing, right understanding begins to develop little by little. And Panya knows how much, just very little, as usual. That's why it takes time to develop Panya to the degree that it can condition direct awareness. Because now we're talking about the reality which can experience, see? But it's not anything which is seeing and hearing. But we remember that what it's seeing and what it's hearing is the reality which can experience through eyes or ears. That's all. Completely gone. In split seconds. Otherwise, there's no condition to letting go the idea of self or I at all. And it's not by anyone. Only right understanding performs its function of letting go. For example, when we talk about death, is there any moment of letting go? But it will lead to more and more thinking about the truth. So when we talk about the danger of the circle of birth and death, it doesn't mean that as soon as one hears about it, there is the right understanding to see the danger of it. Yet, not enough. As long as there is other thing as object from that moment on. Who thinks about death this moment? See, it's gone. And when will it come back? Who knows?
Ajarn, can I ask you more about dosa? Dosa, when there is anger, is dosa. When there is worry, is also dosa. Or when there is scarcity, is also dosa. So, what's the truth of that moment of being angry, and there's some difference or any different citasika accompanying with dosa in each case?
Do you like unpleasant feeling? Do you like unpleasant feeling? And that is dota. And that is dota.
Whenever there is not liking anything and it arises with unpleasant feeling, it's dosa, no matter you call it fear or worry or agitation or annoyance or just different kinds of dosa of not liking the object with unpleasant feeling.
But how we can call, for example, when we saw some dangerous animal, why we don't call immediately that is the anger, but not scarcity? Scarcity that scare something Yeah, scarcity, yes. Fear, yeah. But there should be some different characteristics.
It's different kinds of dosa, like there are many different kinds of attachment, many different kinds of dosa, but still it's not liking, like when one's jealous of one's friend or very stingy, or anyway, these also are different kinds of dhammas, but whenever there's not liking, anger, fear, annoyance, disturbance.
So why we don't just say that we don't like that?
Sorry?
Why don't we just say that we don't like that dog, but we just
like
recognize that
we're
it's
afraid, it's draw away from. It's unpleasant feeling is there. That's
yes,
all.
Yes.
So different kinds, many different kinds.
Well, because there's a big difference between not liking and being afraid of. So we need to have words to explain the difference in conventional language, even though the mental factor is the same, one and the same.
So why we don't have any other Cetasika to meanwhile there's some case that some theta has get another function of another theta. Why we don't?
So we think there should be a separate cetasika for each emotion or each different kind of feeling or emotion, but there's nothing to say there should be, because the one cetasika can have different aspects. Like
when there's just a little bit of liking about this tablecloth, but not much, just very, very little, hardly even pleasant feeling, maybe just neutral feeling, just tiny bit. And what about when there's loving one's child so much one doesn't want to be parted? Same cetasika.
I agree that there are same characteristics that is the not liking the object, but why that is quite real that we can rapidly recognize that is scare and is anger immediately, and when we can talk to another people that I'm feel anger.
So just different kinds of dosa. If we keep asking, why didn't the Buddha give another cetasika, or why is it the same, or why are all those that arise with unpleasant feeling kinds of dosa, then instead of understanding what appears now, we just keep tormenting ourselves. Why couldn't he be more inventive? Why couldn't he have more? Why aren't there 100 cetasikas? Why is patience, virya cetasika the same as when there is courage? So it doesn't lead to any understanding of reality now. It's just the way it is.
Can we say that because they are conditioned in differently, like when one is concerned about one's safety, then it conditions what we call fear, but actually it's still dosa. But when there's thinking about the unpleasant side of the object, then that's more this like hatred or not liking. But in the end, it's still the same. But it's just like it's conditioned differently, and the object that one think about is a little bit different in each case.
Can one say that it is because of attachment and ignorance? If there was no clinging to what is light, there would be no dosa, whether it's the fear about what will happen to me or one's dear ones, or the not liking what one's given to eat. So all conditioned by attachment and ignorance, whatever kind of dosa it is. If there's no attachment to sense objects, is there any dosa? If there is no attachment to sense objects? For
No
the one who has
attachment
no
to-
attachment to sense objects, is there any dosa?
No.
No. Or of any kind, yes.
So like the baby, when the baby was born and he or she cries, and at that time is because maybe he or she does like something, so at that time is the what kind is dosa, but it's
Not getting what they want,
so
not liking the object experienced. Too hot, too cold, too hungry, too thirsty, too not the way that it's liked.
Because I see some mothers worried that and guess and thinking that why the baby crying, so maybe he or she is hungry or angry at something or scared of anything. So
What is the real reason? What is the real reason the baby or we get angry?
because I understand that it have the same cause is the attachment to something.
You accumulated ignorance and attachment
Yeah.
and dosa,
And-
that's the real reason.
Like Thâm said that is the because of it's case that when we scare about our security, maybe we feel scared. But so it means that the feeling at that time is conditioned by the concept, and we can call that is afraid of, about something, and not angry at that anymore. Or I really still confused about that.
That's trying to do something, it's not understanding. So a moment of fear, it's the Dhamma, it can be understood. If one thinks, if I do this and I do that, then there won't be any fear, then it's not understanding what is conditioned already. By the time one tries to do something to stop it, that fear has fallen away. So we're talking about understanding, not changing what is being conditioned already.
I sympathise with you. I hear, that dilemma that you seem to have, because when I first heard about this myself, I thought, and this has been raised before, and people said, why isn't there a cetasika called fear? But when I thought about it more carefully, I could see I think it's a very clever way of classifying, because the Dhamma of dosa is not liking, and you can see that fear, there is a dislike of something. So when you think of all these different things, we have all these different adjectives in English for it, but they have a common denominator. They have a commonness about them. And I'm sure it's the same in your own language too, that even though we don't use that exact same word, they have a common theme to them all. And if we consider all those themes carefully, we will see the relationship that they have with one another.
What do you not like?
What do
Spicy food? Or what? Sweet food? Salty food?
Not really. Yes, Ravidan. Yeah.
What do you not like?
Is the concept about that one?
No, just what do you not like?
About the...
No, not about. What do you not like?
The temperature is too cold or
Okay. And what else?
That I don't like when I cannot hear you clearly.
What else?
I don't like I don't know when feel hungry.
Okay. Is that moment real?
Is there a moment real? For me now is real, but actually it's only the thinking about something.
You don't have to think when you are hungry.
Yes,
Do you like it?
Don't like it.
Whatever that performs the function of not attached to, it dislike that object which appears. It's not you, but it's a reality. You cannot say that it's not real. It's real, but it's not you. And it's different from like.
Yes.
So there is lopa, like, and dosa, dislike. Even you don't call it, it's in daily life. To know that it's not you, it's a reality, it's unwholesome. It will condition bad or harsh speech, all kinds of kusala.
Why when we feel angry at something, or we can, no, sorry, when the fear is, we feel afraid of something or somebody or some.
Do you like it?
I don't like it.
And that is a reality which dislike it.
But at that time, the action after that is different from when we feel angry. Because when, for example, when we
do you like to be envy?
We can express our emotion, but when we feel scared,
just a simple point. Do you like it at that moment?
I agree that I don't.
You don't like it.
Don't like the same.
And if a dog jumps up at you and you're scared, do you like it at that moment?
No.
No, that's.
Yes, I agree that they are same. Don't like, not liking any object at that time. But why? Yes, that's why the action after each case is different.
Well.
Can you control? Can you make it arise?
Cannot.
That is Dhamma, uncontrollable. Learn to understand Dhamma is conditioned to arise. You cannot change conditions for like or dislike at all.
Is the not liking now, for example, when you cannot answer the question, is it the same as not liking yesterday? Same or different?
Different.
Different. The liking now, like liking the warm temperature, is it the same as the liking this morning, liking of something else? Same or different?
Different.
It's always different. Each moment of liking is different. Each moment of disliking is different. Never the same, even for 2 moments. That's the nature of Dharma. It arises, it falls away. It can never be the same at any moment. But each moment of disliking has that common characteristic of not liking, but never the same.
I think it's not very helpful that we try to find the answer for something that we curious. I think the more important is understanding about the characteristic of the reality that is up here. Like dosa, it appear in different situation, different, that you feel that is different, like when you are angry or you are you have fear. The story is, I mean, it's not important to find the answer and to find the why different, but more important is to know that it's a Dhamma to arise.
So can you...
Is there like now? We're talking about like and dislike. Is there like now? Is it you?
No.
What is it? Is it real?
It's real.
So it's a reality, not you. So learn to understand that whatever arises is not anyone or anything at all. It arises and falls away so fast, in split seconds. What is left is only image, the succession of that which is seen as hair or dress or leg or whatever. Just one moment or one reality which arises and fall away. You don't know what is it, right? But
Yes.
when you see many, many moments, there is some idea about that which is seen from the image which is left after each one arises and falls away as something. Do you like that?
Lie about what?
That which arises and falls away all the time, uncontrollable.
It's true, so...
It's true. So you like it, you don't like it.
I have to accept that. I have to accept that it's...
But you can find out now. Do you like it? That which arises and falls away?
I don't...
Completely, never to return at all. Do you like that? Which just arises. For what? To fall away. You dislike it?
Yes.
It is akusala.
Yes.
Dislike is akusala. It's not right understanding, which begins to know the truth. And the idea of I is less and less when there's more and more understanding of the truth of each reality as not self at all. So just consider what appears in a day to understand what you have heard about the Dhamma. But it's not just to name it, to understand it. It is the characteristic which arises by conditions. When the object is pleasant, it conditions like to arise. You cannot change it, you cannot control it. But to learn to understand that it's not you, it doesn't belong to anyone. Why? Because it's gone completely. So it's avijja, ignorance, which takes everything to be so good, to live, to die and born again, non-stop.
At that moment of dislike, when there's understanding of the dislike that it appears, is there any naming it dosa or fear or anything else? Or it just has a characteristic which can be known at that moment?
This characteristics should be
So
known.
it's just that nature, that kind of dislike, whether it's the one from yesterday or the one tomorrow or the one now, whatever it is, it just has its particular characteristic which can be known as it is at that moment, whatever it's called. So it doesn't really matter what the name or the label is. It's just that kind of Dhamma that can be known at that moment. And it can be known when it's understood that it's unwholesome Dhamma at that moment too.
Yes.
I just want to mention it's 4 o'clock, so if anyone needs to leave now, please do. But Ajarn said that she's happy to continue for a while, so those who are free, who would like to continue, we will continue on.
If there's doubt, the absolute doubt.
So this morning we mentioned about the doubt and wrong view. These two realities not arise together. And Ajarn just mentioned about like and dislike, same, right? It's opposite characteristics, so it's never arise at the same time.
Can there be pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling together? Same. As Anna's resurfaced, come back to join us. Perhaps it's a good chance to go through some of Lucas's questions. So this is Lucas from Poland, and he sent some questions. There are quite a few, so I think Anne is going to go through them one at a time, and they're particularly addressed to Ajarn.
My apologies, I think jet lag caught up with me. Anyway, yes, there are a number of questions here from Lucas. He has been thinking about determination and effort generally, and he's talking about mundane determination to do things in life, things like developing skills and progressing with a new job. But he feels sad. He says, I am mostly feeling sad and tinha and mita. I can't find the energy to do anything. Of course, this is all no self, but those people with strong determination succeed in many life areas. I'd like to study Dhamma again and start doing something interesting, change work, all by non-self. What does Ajarn think of this? It would be nice to hear her say something I didn't hear before.
Well, Ajarn has asked me to answer, so he'll be sure of hearing something he hasn't heard before. We can think about doing different things, but it's only thinking. Having determination of that kind, of the conventional kind, is also just a kind of thinking. We call it determination because of the way we think, but it doesn't indicate any particular mental factor. And also we have to realize that things work in life in different ways depending on various conditions, not just our own intention, wish, or determination. So the best thing is to realize the not-self nature of all Dhammas appearing, and to forget about trying to use Dhamma to achieve certain conventional results, but to appreciate that if understanding is developed, then other things will happen according to other conditions also.
He's mentioned in here, of course it is all no self, and then he wants to do something interesting and change work by non-self. Can you say someone, about thinking it's all by non-self, and actually knowing no self. I say at this point, there's insufficient panya for most anyone to really understand non-self.
It's dhammas that are non-self.
Right.
So again, the conventional world is not non-self. Right. Trying to change jobs is not non-self.
Right.
It's only dhammas that have the characteristic of non-self. So again, it's kind of mixing dhamma and conventional considerations. So the two, well, as I said earlier, Dhamma cannot be used to achieve conventional ends.
Okay, would it also be accurate to say the wanting, non-self itself, is self-wanting, non-self, which is not ever going to happen?
Well, it depends, because this question of self or non-self is not as simple as saying I want equals idea of self.
Right.
The wrong view of self has a particular characteristic. So if a person says I want to do this, or I think that, or how are you, or anything, these words I and you cannot be assumed to connote a wrong view of self. So we need to keep them slightly separate. So the wanting can be, as the Buddha said many times in the suttas, it can be with attachment, with conceit, or with wrong view. But we can't get an answer by looking at the situation. It depends on the citta at the moment of the individual.
Okay.
The understanding of Dhamma is not firm enough. That's why everyone always forgets that actually there's no one, no matter what happens, what decision is there. It depends on conditions. Even right now, see, everything which arises depends on conditions, no matter going left or right, or make decision this way or the other way, by conditions.
I think when we have heard a little about the Dhamma, we use a lot of terms like determination and effort and tina and mida, but mixing everything up in a conventional sense, like I can't find energy to do things. This has nothing to do with virya, like Ajarn has stressed. If we don't know when virya arises and with what chittas, then it has nothing to do with the mental factor of virya, and the same with adhimokkha or determination. So we're just talking conventionally, and then referring to no self. As Jonathan said, one can't talk about the no self of conventional energy or conventional determination. They don't suddenly become no self just because there's thinking about no self. So if there's no understanding of each word, each term, what is energy, how there's energy even when it seems there is no energy, like even in when dreaming there is virya arising. So that's why if there's no study, everything gets mixed up. And I'd like to study Dhamma again and do something useful at work. Well, what about understanding right now, no matter whether one's at work or at home or tired or not tired, because at moments of kusala, no tina mida.
Sarah, can we not say that when understanding does develop and increase, that the conventional terminology for determination or energy might also increase.
You mean if there's more understanding of the quality of virya, we'll talk more about
whether it's understanding of virya or
that.
understanding of any of the aspects of Dhamma.
I think there will be the more understanding, the less confusion, the less mixing up there will be. There won't be the idea that I am making an effort.
Oh, right, of course.
Is anything to do with non-self or the quality of virya.
Oh, absolutely.
He says he's using these words conventionally, but of course, but then he says it's all no self.
Well, I'm just talking about understanding per se.
Yes.
Mental development, understanding, development of more panya, coming by conditions. Would that also possibly condition virya in the conventional sense?
I think it will condition more kusala of different kinds, but the particular kind of kusala will depend on the accumulated tendencies of that individual. So we can't say more panya means
we cannot say which one,
which
it would condition.
Right.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay.
Virya in the conventional sense, like, I'm making a real effort to study hard to pass my exams, or I'm making a big effort to make a nice dinner for my family. It doesn't really have anything to do with kusala, virya, or understanding.
Because we cannot predict the conditions that will arise anyway. So
the lazy person who develops panya doesn't mean they have less laziness, right? They still.
No matter how much we hear about the non-self, no one. But when it's not the moment of direct awareness, it's impossible to really understand that moment as no self, because it doesn't mean that just hearing about them, the words of the Buddha, it can eliminate or eradicate the idea of self at all, because it's not enough as long as there is not moment of direct awareness to be sure that that is not self, because its characteristic is just that. How can it be any self in it? So there must be thinking a lot, making decision as long as the understanding of the non-self is not firm enough.
And when I was listening to you this morning, Ajarn, when I came in here quite early, I thought, Ajarn's here already. And this was about, not 9:30. You were saying something, it was a long time ago because I could hear you had a younger voice. And you were talking about, and I think it's relative to this question, because you were talking about how much attachment we've accumulated, how it's so close to us in our life all the time. And so there's always the danger, when we talk about developing the path, that we will hug also the attachment closely to us in that development. So it's easy to bring unknowingly attachment into the development of the path. And I found that was quite helpful just listening to that it's very subtle, the path is very difficult, but also to be, I was going to say to be aware, but to be aware of falling into the trap of bringing attachment along with the development of the path. It will happen sometimes, invariably. It happens a lot of the time. But listening to you, I was reminded of how easy it is to have so much attachment and to bring that into the development of the path if we don't have good friends and wise people around us.
Like before, one heard about the Dhamma there may have been a lot of attachment to shopping or going to tasty restaurants, but now that one's heard about the Dhamma, there may be a lot of attachment to having more understanding quickly, or having less dosa, or being able to see Ajarn more often, or so just attachment clings to different objects. Attachment just changes what it clings to, but it's still attachment. And Betty's good question about whether conventional thinking changes. I think life carries on, and if there's any expectation that the normal way of thinking or acting will be different, then that's not right. But also, as understanding gradually develops, there will be less idea that in reality I make an effort or I can decide anything. So in this sense, gradually the way of thinking conventionally will change, but without any expectation. So it's a good point.
Yes, also how seeing how the self works, which always tries to get what there's no accumulations for, like viriya, kusala, and trying not to have what oneself already accumulated, which is akusala and all different sort of akusala. Instead of understanding one's own accumulations, the self basically tries to not to have them, and trying instead of having what the self hasn't got accumulated, which of course just shows them how the self is based on ignorance about conditions, about karma, about vipaka, about pakatupanisya pachaya, and so on.
Trying to change the accumulations, trying to get rid of the dosa rather than just understand whatever is conditioned. I think it's a good point. Do you want to continue?
Yes, there's one more question here. I've read this, and I don't take any offense whatsoever in what he said, so hopefully no one else will either. Also, Ajarn often mentions she had no interest in writing a book. So my question is, if there is no interest, does it mean you never have written a book? And is that all right? Because it sounds a bit like an excuse not to do anything. So if one has no interest in doing something, is that just an excuse for not doing it? I'm not interested.
At that moment it's I and ignorance.
I'm sorry, at that moment?
Ignorance and the idea of I.
Yes, ignorance at the idea of I. And he's wondering if this kind of approach is proper. I think you've answered that. It's ignorance at the idea of I. I determining, there's an I to determine whether I do something or not, rather than conditions. Okay, and then he says, for example, I have no interest to work. I have no effort to work. What does that mean? That I stop working or don't work at all?
If there is direct awareness, no problem.
Okay. Thank you. I guess the follow-up question on that Lucas might have is, if there is not direct awareness, so is lack of interest just an excuse?
Because you see that panya is there when there is a direct understanding of whatever is there as not self. So what happened, depending on conditions, no matter he thinks this way or that way, it's not him at all. So the best thing in life is to understand reality as it is, because it has to arise by conditions anyway, anytime, by conditions.
Jonathan or Sarah, anything to add?
Yes, conventionally there's a problem because conventionally one would say he's lazy, he doesn't like to work, so he makes excuses not to turn up to his job, so he keeps losing his jobs and then has no income. And he says, well, it's like Ajarn says, I have no accumulations to write, so then she doesn't write. So in my case, I have no interest in working, so I don't need to work. So it's like a kind of excuse. But even at those moments of thinking like that, and he knows it's a kind of excuse, but even at those moments of thinking like that about me, they are just different dhammas, and there can be understanding right then and there, because each moment of thinking is conditioned. It can't be anywhere, any other one. He might like to have the kind of thinking that Tam or Nina might have, but these are the accumulated ways of thinking at that moment. So a bit like when there is doubt or thinking, why can't I have more understanding? That's the accumulated thinking at that moment, and this is for him the accumulated thinking. So no point in trying to change it or think it should be another way, because that's how it is. Tomorrow it may be completely different, who knows, but at this moment that's how it is. So the only answer, as Ajarn mentioned, is the right understanding right now, because this is all there is. No point wishing to have a different way of thinking. That's fantasy thinking, not understanding.
Jonathan?
Well, I find it a very weird line of argument, because for a person in his position, work is necessary, otherwise he has no livelihood. So how can you compare it to something that is optional, like writing or anything else? It's just so ridiculous.
And when we read in the suttas, we can see that there are so many different kinds of people who attain enlightenment. Like some people are very wealthy, have very high position, and some people are very poor, or some people have very miserable lives. But when time comes, they became enlightened. That shows that understanding develops no matter of the different accumulations.
Some work hard and earn a lot of money and then lose it all, or some do nothing and then somehow they come into some fortune or anything. So, as you say, all kinds of, what's important is the accumulated understanding.
This make me refers to what discussed yesterday about from CERN about skillful in certain, we have certain skill in daily life, like at work, cooking or painting, etc. And also skillful in one's job is also one of the blessing. And you said that it has to be with panya. So could you elaborate more about that?
So we can think about various skills like in one's work or at home, and we know it's useful to have these kinds of skills, but what we call skills conventionally, like being good at mathematics or being good at cooking, it has nothing to do with kusala at all, because what we call these skills, it's usually mostly driven by lobha. So if there's no understanding, then in the long run they're useless. Like Tam said, all kinds of people with or without different skills developed understanding and became enlightened. Some who we might call lazy layabouts, and some who were highly accomplished. But It's the understanding that matters in the long run, the understanding that knows what appears now as Dhamma.
Can I say, for example, I'm really bad at numbers and calculating and finance, etc. And I really don't want to do it. But when I do that, because some of the things that I has to do with my current work, but I try to think, oh, there's a little bit of patience to be accumulate. I need to learn because for others, because it had a part of my job, etc. And somehow there's good thinking in that, so it can be
maybe consideration, like when we go to Vietnam and Thai is too busy and you have to look after everyone, so you have to do the calculations even though you don't like it. So it can be moments of consideration, but actually whether you do it or don't do it, there can be understanding. It's still visible object that's seen, it's still sound that's heard. And Panya can know there are moments of kusala, like if you're helping Thai or helping your home, or helping the foreigner who's staying there. So different realities.
Because actually, in fact, whatever you do, it's just like seeing, hearing, touching, etc. Just all realities.
And I also appreciate when Ajarn said that it's all because of me and I, because there's so many different ways of thinking that motivate oneself to work, like even like not to be a burden for others, like not to be the source of worries for others. So it's all the time it's the thinking about myself that is the problem.
And what one dislikes, like for Tiny Tam, it may be anything to do with numbers. That might be what she was afraid of or had disliked before, but by getting used to it and thinking about helping these others around, maybe less and less conditions for dislike, and at moments of consideration, no dislike at that time. So we can see that whatever arises is by conditions, not how we think it will be.
We know that the attachment low-far condition for dosa, condition dosa to arise. So I wonder that when dosa arises, before that there must be low-far mula citta arises, or it arises in the way of tendency, latent tendency, or it must be...
So the latent tendency of the sensual attachment has not been eradicated, and the latent tendency of dosa has not been eradicated. So it just depends on conditions when attachment arises, when dosa will arise unexpectedly. No rule about when or which first or what time, just entirely depending on different conditions. But the main one is that accumulated tendency, which is there, ready to condition that lobha or dosa any time.
For example, when there's painful bodily feeling, there's usually dosa too. So, right? Painful bodily feeling, it can be a condition for dosa, aversion, because we don't like it. So, no attachment, no lobha arising beforehand, just the painful bodily feeling and then dosa immediately.
Maybe for Tam, usually when she gets out the calculator, there's conditions for dosa, just looking at it, but sometimes she may get it out and there may be lobha, who knows. And like for Lucas, just thinking about work, conditioned for dosa. But maybe when he's there and he's having fun with his colleagues, there's lots of lobha. Who knows? Do you have any comments on his questions? What do you agree with?
I agree because normally I dislike the meeting at work. Yes. But sometimes I get fun with my colleague. Yes. Yes. So it's condition lobha and dosa anytime when it has a right condition. Yeah, no self.
You think that in advance that you're going to dislike it and be so bored, and then 5 minutes later forget all about it and laughing and enjoying. So anything can arise by conditions.
Yes, we don't know what happens.
Sometimes the thinking and anticipating is the worst part.
Can I say that maybe because of the attachment to the idea of self, that I have to do this and I have to do that and so on?
Long stories and not understanding the conditioned nature of reality now, thinking, oh, when I go out there I'm going to get stuck in traffic and this is going to happen, and then so there's dosa and worry even before one goes out. But who knows what moment of seeing will be conditioned by karma, what moment of hearing will be conditioned by karma. So often it's the idea that it depends on what I do or what I think, but we forget all about the experiences through the sense doors as being conditioned by karma.
So just very little, very few, just be clarified that. So what we just mentioned about life or work or whatever happened is arise and falling away, is always no one to do and nothing to do with it, right? And understanding can also be accumulate or arise to understand whatever arise, even lobha or dosa or whatever realities, right?
This is a right way of thinking, because some people, they start to study the Dhamma and they think it's a waste of time to be at work, or they should just be in the monastery, or they should just be studying Dhamma books. But this is wrong understanding. They don't understand that whether at work or at home, there's seeing, there's hearing, there's thinking, and it's one's responsibility to take care of one's livelihood and family members and so on.
And also same apply to whether being with someone, with lover, or with family, or with friends, or even with good Dhamma friends by condition, right? No choice. Okay.
And in the real sense, it's just moments of seeing and hearing and thinking, no matter here or there, at work or not at work. Moments of seeing and hear conditioned by karma. So I can't make my life better by not going to work or by going to work, because seeing is not in my control, hearing is not in my control, nothing is in my control. So they're just conditioned dharmas, whichever way one goes.
And I'm remembering about Anathapindika's son, who Anathapindika was quite concerned about. He was a bit of a wastrel, and he didn't spend his time very well at all. And Anathapindika asked him to go along to the temple, and he wasn't really interested. But then Anathapindika said to him, "I'll give you so much gold if you go along." And so he went along, and he got the money, and he was quite happy about that. He thought, "Oh, this is easy." And then Anathapindika said, "I want you to go along this time. I'll give you some more money this time, but I want you to come back and tell me what you heard. I want you to listen very carefully, in other words. He did this, and the Buddha knew he was listening, and he spoke to him, spoke the Dhamma in such a way that he understood it, and he became Sotapanna. And when he came back, Anathapindika wanted to give him a go. He was so embarrassed, he didn't want to take it, because he understood. So, I mean, I think it's a wonderful reminder. Of course, Anathapindika's son was very fortunate. He had a very wealthy father, and so many, all sorts of reasons for that, as we know. But he had the accumulations, and he was able to understand the Dhamma. But I think it's a rather inspiring story. He's rather a fortunate fellow in many ways, but he'd obviously accumulated a lot of understanding in past lives. But yeah, I was really quite towards the end when Anathapindika wanted to give him some money. He was very embarrassed. He said, "No, I cannot take money from the understanding that I now have."